So let's start with reconstructing this lost science, the rational basis of the astrological lots, the kleros, which is an inquiry into the theoretical foundation of a core but yet misunderstood concept in Hellenistic astrology. So let's have a look. So when we address the idea of this ancient puzzle, what a lot is, then you know that Hellenistic astrology is built on three primary techniques: planets, houses, which are better called topical places, and lots, which are called kleros. Now, of course, you know that planets are observable bodies, and houses are defined by their topics, the topics associated with them. But lots are a theoretical construct. They are calculated, and they cannot be seen in the heavens. So that's very interesting, because their introduction must have been for a specific and rational reason, not because they were visible in the sky, but simply they were introduced to represent something that is very interesting, of course. So how did the ancients conceive of these abstract points, and why were they so important in this astrology? And another important principle having to do with what Plato introduces these two levels of reality, so to speak, the image and the original, is the path downward and the path upward. And the path downward is from light to matter, something uh, descends into materiality, so to speak. And when you go the other way around, the upward path, you go from material principles to light and life. So yeah, that's a very important spiritual principle going on, but also a very materialistic principle. So let me show you how Plato divided this into segments in his teaching. Now, first of all, there's also an astrological principle having to do with this shaking, and that has to do with what's going on at the ascendant, because the images rising there are wobbling, because they sometimes are more north-like and sometimes more south-like, and that represents sort of a wobble. So the shaking of the helmet that needs a movement that goes into the dimensions simultaneously, and that corresponds exactly to the movement of the ecliptic rotating against the ascendant. So the ascendant acts as the mechanism that shakes out the lot, the astrological lot, so to speak, and that forces a specific physical result out of the cosmic rotation. And the idea of the ascendant is always found in the way in which lots are mostly calculated. Sometimes it doesn't start with the ascendant, sometimes they start with a planet, but the most of the lots that can be calculated have to do with the ascendant. So the ascendant plus planet B minus planet C, and then from the ascendant, etc., that locates the lot in the natal chart. So yeah, this idea of Homer and the shaking of the helmet can be reproduced in astrological principles. In his postscript to his fantastic tutorial on the Hermetic lots, this is what Schmidt said: the Greek word for a lot is kleros. In an astrological context, this word refers to something cast out from some place in the chart, and that's normally from the ascendant, and that reminds us of the art of kleromancy, which is divination by means of casting lots. As you can see in this image, when something needed to be done, for instance, when soldiers had to go on a sort of suicide mission or a difficult one, then they put their names in on such port shards. They were put in a helmet, and the helmet was shaken, and whichever one fell out, and the guy with his name on that had to perform that action or had to go into this on this mission. So that's what it meant. So, and that's interesting because that can be really associated with the manner in which the lots are cast in a natal chart. So, and that's what he said: the lot represents some province or topic in human life, which is another meaning of the word kleros, and represents this topic in a manner similar to a topical place, that is, a house. which we now call a house in natal chart. So interesting. Now I looked at Wikipedia, and that site told me that a province is almost always an administrative division within a country or a state. The term derives from an ancient Roman provincia, that word, which was the major territorial and administrative unit of the Roman Empire territorial possessions outside Italy. And that was sort of a hint to me as well, because it's interesting, as it suggests that this allotted portion, astrologically, is actually outside the homeland, so to speak. And to me this suggests that it is outside the natal chart as such. And that can only mean that it refers to the realm outside the natal chart, which is the world at large, represented by the fortune places and all the other things having to do with the third level, which I will be addressing. So I find that very interesting. So again, the allotted portion is located outside of the natal chart in my conception, and I believe that was also Schmidt's conception. And then the world at large, represented by the fortune places, that's where these principles sort of land. So they are appointed, they are allocated to specific regions in the world at large. So represented, of course, by something in your natal chart, but then refer to the fortune places, etc. So that's a very interesting conceptual background of what it means to have to work with the lots, and especially the Hermetic lots. And another thing that's very important is that Schmidt said that the responsibility for this topic is allotted to the planetary lord of the image in which the lot is found. This is not an elective office, as certain other offices are in a given nativity. And this is very important, because this is the big difference, let's say, between a natal chart where planets are sort of representing certain places, certain images, etc. And it seems to be that that is sort of part and parcel of the fact that a planet is the domicile master of a certain image, etc. This big difference is that you could say that here is no free choice. This is simply pointing to a planet that needs to address the issue indicated by the specific lot that you're investigating, or the specific fortune place where this lot resides in the third level of this astrological model. So that's very important also, because there's sort of, well, you could say that this is the not free will level of the astrology, simply because when things in the world happen, they are happening because there are certain conditions that simply work in another way than your intentions. And that's a very interesting definition of what happens on this third level, this lowest level. Things happen there unbeknownst to us and without our intention, and yet they do happen there. So interestingly enough, this astrology really makes place for this sort of conceptualization of what's going on in the world around us and how it can manifest in your own life. So that makes this a very interesting subject to study, in my opinion. Now, there's also a second idea about the word kleros, because it was used in another context, and that was used for the habit of rewarding people by awarding them a lot of land, and that is mostly in a foreign country or region. So remember Wikipedia, they said that the word province is a term that derives from the ancient Roman provincia, which was the major territorial and administrative unit of the Roman Empire's territorial possessions, but outside of Italy. So the heteroi, but for instance the companions of Alexander the Great, were often rewarded with land, and after they won victories in a certain battle, and they were given the land in the specific area where the battle took place. So giving land in reward for military service was very common among the successor states, and many of Alexander's cities started by settling veterans in them. So interesting. So yeah, that's a region outside of the principal state or region where somebody actually lived or was born in or considered a citizen of, and now they were granted land outside of that natal principle, where they were natives, the land where they were natives. And the word native, of course, strongly is reminiscent of the nativity, right, the natal chart. So that's the point I'm making here. So the idea of a lot of land located in a foreign region is helpful in understanding the Hermetic lots, but also hints at how this foreign land can be understood to represent the world of coming to be and passing away. I will explain this, of course, in this tier, and which will be many videos, I guess, as it is one way of understanding the concept of fortune places counted from the lot of fortune. These are regions outside of the natal chart and thus represent something outside your natal makeup, so to speak. So we need this to get to the bottom of life's initiations and trials by fire, because now you are in a strange land, so to speak. You're in a foreign land, and there you need to make amends with everything that happens to you, and there you have to repopulate sort of the principles that are at work there. So that's an interesting one. So the idea of allotments is now mostly I wanted to find some images of the idea of allotment, and then the interesting thing is that I got a massive amount of photographs from people working in a garden that was an allotment. So it's not their own garden near their home, no, it's an allotment that was given to them where they could grow vegetables and whatever. So that's an interesting one. It's also an allotment. So yeah, that's the one that came up when I searched for allotments. And Schmidt kept putting emphasis on the analogical character of the lots. They are analogies, according to him. So let me quote him: "This is the point I began to develop a number of years ago, but I have not yet had a chance to return to it. The full development of this conceptualization of a lot as an analog must wait until my next intensive on the lots. Unfortunately, that intensive never came to be, but I personally have a strong feeling that the realm where the lots reside is a territory, as I said, outside of the natal chart. It's analogous to the place of coming to be and passing away." So this really fits the third level that I've tried to promote in a lot of videos, but also in this one, because this tier will explicitly address the idea where this all is coming from, and that's the third level, of course, the fortune places. So that's hopefully a motivation for you to join me on this tier, because it's going to be a very interesting investigation.